Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this interview with Yuntian Liu. There are many people who always talking to me about they want to study philosophy if they got the chance of like they want to study philosophy if they are they got the condition their family are rich or something. But like during my life, there's very few. In fact, perhaps the only one I know around me study philosophy for his major, and we are with him today. Also, he studied philosophy at Oxford, so that's another thing to know. So, Yuntian Liu, ladies and gentlemen.
So I am studying in Oxford for philosophy and French as a undergraduate. Before that, I was in a international high school in Shanghai, so in China. I studied the IB.
So have you always been deciding to study IB and then study in, say, study abroad outside China, or it's more like a sort of random decision for you?
It's more accidental for me, I think,
Oh,
because I didn't realize or didn't seriously think of studying abroad until I was probably in grade 8. So it was a sudden choice for me. So why I chose philosophy? I think a combination of factors, all of which converged to, I think, up to a certain point in high school where I just realized I really like the way that analytically philosophers think, especially in the English-speaking universities. So I've always been wanting to do that. But there's one reason that I chose Oxford instead of Cambridge or other universities, because I think Oxford is a very good combination for me of several factors. The first of which is that I think Oxford is very academically oriented. So I have a lot of quite intense workload, which I think I'll find enjoyable because it will be a very good kind of intensity where you get the tutorial system. It's sort of, you discuss the essays with literally an expert from the field, and then they'll be picking out your mistakes or giving you a chance to develop your points or opinions. And I think it's very, very interesting. And you get to do it 8 times over 2 months. And I'll be almost over 20 times over the year. It's just very nice. And I think it keeps me engaged and gives me this opportunity to think about it. Second factor is in Oxford, you can only study philosophy in combination with another subject. So
I don't know that.
yes, for undergraduates. For undergraduates,
Sure,
you can only
sure,
study
of course.
philosophy and something.
course.
So I just took philosophy and French. You could also do philosophy in physics, mathematics, philosophy and PPE, which is quite famous, philosophy, politics.
Oh, yes.
So you get all of these choices. And I always thought that I loved philosophy, but not to a point where I would exclude every other subject that I was have interest in.
Yeah.
And I also really like languages, and that's why French
Yeah.
is so with us also throws in it.
Did your parents or anyone else in your family have went abroad before at all?
I'd say not.
No, okay. That's
Both
interesting.
both my grandparents on my mother's side and on my father's side, 4 of them never went past primary school. Masters, I think, or maybe both of them. They are the first one to go to university.
Okay. So do you think, how much do you think their ideas play a role in, you being abroad from undergrad, which is quite a young age? Do you see them laying down a track for you, or like this is completely your choice?
I think they had a lot of things to add to this as well, to my scholarly career, if you can call it that, because they are they're open-minded. Both of them are very open-minded. My father especially has a very modern understanding of building yourself a career, and then it's very much encouraging me also to sort of explore and explore. And I think both of them played a very crucial role in how I was eventually able to go abroad. The roles I wasn't able to understand at the time.
Are you with them like the day you got the offer?
I remember that day.
Do you
Yes.
remember what you were doing? What you guys were doing at that moment?
Well, it was an ordinary day. It was very ordinary. Sorry to be anticlimactic, but I think it was a day like any other. There was sort of tension in the air because we know that it was the 10th of January and it was the day where
Okay.
the results would be. That's the big final day and everyone's waiting for them. I remember I went back home
Okay.
after school. It might be a Thursday and it was a very cloudy, gloomy evening. It was 5 o'clock probably, the sun is setting. It was very painful as well because all of the colleges in Oxford, they gave the results at different times, slightly different times. And it
Okay.
didn't really tell you about it. So you have the whole day basically to be extremely anxious.
Okay.
5 o'clock in the evening would be probably 9 o'clock in the morning in the UK. So it was right after school. It was, now is your time to wait for the final judgment.
Oh
So I
my
sat
God.
there in my room. I didn't focus on anything else. I wasn't able to. I was just going around and refreshing the page of my website email, and I was looking for the results. My dad has already been back. He is cooking in the kitchen. He's making
No.
food. Obviously, he didn't want to like, supervise me throughout all this. He knows how much I was anxious. I know how much he is anxious. So he's sort of in the kitchen, just doing it himself to make it seem like an ordinary day, which it
Sure.
was. And then suddenly, I forgot where I saw it, but on my phone, I think this notification came up. It's like Merton College. No way, this is a big moment. I click on it, and it was a PDF as well. So you don't see on the emails immediately. You see a PDF, you have to click
All
again.
right.
It's like, I was like, no way. Should I tell my dad this or I open this now? I didn't thought about it too long. I was like, whatever. I'm just clicking and accept what's going to happen.
Yeah.
First what I saw was congratulations. And I thought, that is settled. All dust have settled. And I went immediately running to the kitchen and told my dad.
Okay.
I was like, 爸，我被录取了，我被牛津。And then he was just, oh, very well done.
Did he like intentionally act cool or anything, or like just
I
let
think
it burst out?
he's the kind of person that expresses his coolness over time. So
Okay.
slowly
Okay.
burning. Whereas my mom, I think,
What did she do? Yeah.
she was still in the company at the time, so she heard the news through text on the WeChat group chat we had.
Okay.
Maybe she went back home. She was just running to my room, and I was hugging me and crying. I was so happy about this, and that was a big day. But it was an ordinary day.
Yeah.
It was a very intense day that eventually ended in something that wasn't unfortunate.
Oh, so good. Yeah.
Life.
But like the thing I'm really curious, and the thing I think we can provide for other people is that I know the rough process about most master program, no matter what they are for Oxford, but I have no idea how exactly does like undergrad enrollment run. So did you take any interviews on philosophy and French per se? I'm really curious about that.
Yes. So
Okay.
to give an example, for philosophy, I got a logic question to
Sure.
begin
Okay.
with. So like, give you some arguments or some questions, and you have to present your reasoning and then give a conclusion, like true or false. Maybe give one of these typical ones, like 4 people talking to each other, they each made a statement, and you're meant to say, and they then tell you, one of them is lying, everyone else is telling the truth. So who is lying? Who's telling the truth? But tell us how you reason. That's most important. They want you to show how you think, and then they want the test from that what how able you are at doing the task that would be associated with the subject.
Okay.
So I had that. The second part, I had another discussion about some moral problem, about personal identity, I think. So one of the topics in philosophy. To give you an idea, under what conditions can a person still be himself after death has happened? So, for example, if I've undergone
Mm.
a brain swap, but my brain has been replaced by someone else's brain, do I survive as the same person, or am I
Mm.
another person? Interesting question like these.
Okay.
For the French one, I had some commentary exam on a poem. They basically
Wow.
gave me some. They gave
That's
me
fun.
so it gave me something to read during the exam. I wasn't given this before. Interview started, and they're like, "So, hello, here's a poem. We'll give you 5 minutes to analyze this, and then you tell us what you think." And then they turn off the camera, and it's just a poem. And then you're just writing
Really?
away, and then just
Oh,
panicking for 5 minutes, and ideally you're not panicking, but I did. And then eventually it's sort of, I think for the French one, which is a very literary subject, it is a literary subject, I think.
Mm.
Humanities subject, you're supposed to show how sensitive you are to some of the interpretation parts. For example, how do you interpret this? How do you recognize the stylistic differences? And all these are quite technical. But of course, you weren't expected to know a lot of theories or terminology at that point. So all you have
Yeah.
to do is, I noticed there was an interesting fact between this and this. I don't know how to
Mm.
describe it, but there's a connection. They'll tell you, oh, actually, that's good because this connection in our terminology is called dialectic or is called onomatopoeia. And they'll, with that, you have the ability, even though you weren't in a position to know these terminology. And it's quite interesting.
Do you think your passion for philosophy is sort of more like naturally born with, or it was influenced by, say, your parents?
Very tough question because self-examination is never an easy thing. But to answer the question, I think more or less my surroundings would have an influence on me, but I can't exactly put my fingers on what element or what events exactly precipitated this development in me. But I would say that generally speaking, I've had great teachers who've been very inquisitive and who've really dug at things at depth. I have parents. My parents are also very they're thinking type.
Mm.
They think about things and they talk and sort of reason with me in all aspects. But I think if I needed to point to something concrete that happened, it must be the reading of Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time. It's quite a philosophical one, actually. It's presenting all the ideas of how you conceive of relativity, what is a deterministic universe, what are the arguments for and against it, and all the things that follow, all gravity. I read the whole thing. I'm like, this is so interesting. I must study physics.
Oh man.
I studied astronomy over the summer of last year middle school, so year 9. Right before
Okay.
I was about to enter high school, I studied astronomy in the US in the summer
Mm.
school program. So I did
Okay.
all of that. It was quite a standard achieving, very, very good introduction to the
Mm.
subject. A little mathematics. It was actually a science course, but I know that something was missing. Several years to really convince myself that it was philosophy, actually, from all along. It was philosophy all along. So I read the book, that's why, how I figured it.
Oh. So, what is people's taking out the Oxford brand alongside for just a little bit? What is people's first instant response when they heard, one is a philosophy and French student? What response do you get from, from people who don't know you very much?
They'll say, if they're not studying philosophy already, they'll say, oh, you must be smart.
Okay. And what do you say in response to that?
I still haven't figured out a good response to that. I'll say something like, oh, thank you very much. Or it's
Yeah.
not actually that. I'm not actually that smart. Things like that. And one day I'll come up with a witty response. Trust me.
Okay, yeah. I want to also dive into a bit about how they actually do and teach philosophy in Oxford. So, what is the normal way to teach philosophy on an everyday basis?
First, we go to actually the lectures and the tutorials are independent. So you're not obliged to go to the lectures, but they'll be very helpful if you did go. And you listen to the lectures, then you'll be assigned alongside that, but not directly related to the lectures, a list of questions, topics, and guidances, and also a very important thing, reading list. It's very common. A very long reading list always.
Surely.
It's it's quite tough, pretty much impossible to get through all of them each time. But you're meant to do as much as you can. When you're revising, you go back to it. That's the idea. And then each time you get assigned a topic, and then your tutor will come to you through email saying, "We're going to do this essay by which week? First week, second week. You're going to submit this to me, and we're going to have a tutorial group. Normally, I think not more than 3 people, or 2 people even in philosophy, because it's meant to be more intense, right? It's meant to be question and answer based. And you would have written your essay, and then you would turn up, and then there will be a tutor, maybe your tutorial partner, another student like you, and then both of you, you'll be discussing the topic and also reading out your essay or discussing your essay.
Actually reading out
Sometimes
loud.
sometimes it's read.
Okay.
It's preferable to have read
I don't know that.
to have read your tutorial partner's essay beforehand, but usually if you don't have time, you're going to read it out. And it's quite cruel because you're sort of put on the scene of the theatre, and then you're just performing your monologues, and then you put to the test, and there's a cruel audience. I mean, the tutor is really one person, but you feel like they have they know about the subject so well that basically everything you say is going to sound stupid to them. Now, I'm joking, but you're mentally challenged in that environment, and most likely after you finish the tutorials, you'll feel like you've got more to learn and you've got more to think about, and the tutor will give you guidance. Sometimes they'll recommend you a book or an article that they think will be very important for you. It's sort of personalized because usually it turns out that different students have different focuses on even for the same topics. The tutor would give you a recommendation and so you can look into it, and then you can study more so that during the exam you have more things to say that interest you to begin with.
Have you ever felt like there was a certain amount of expectation for you as a Chinese to bring some Chinese elements of Chinese philosophy to the group or to the major or to the class?
Never.
Really?
No, I was definitely not expected to present anything like that, because I think everyone to a certain extent is treated equally, unless it's points where the topic somehow comes up where what you've been, what we've lived through.
Is there any piece of philosophical knowledge you learned that you think have a certain enlightening effect on your personal life? Or do you think philosophy should do that? Should philosophy have an enlightening effect on your life? So what do you think of that question?
That's a very good question. Now, yes, it really
Oh,
depends
yes?
on philosopher. It really depends on philosopher and what they think about, because there are different ideas about different fields as well. I won't go into technical details here, but I think, for example, if you go and think about philosophers like Plato,
Okay.
it's more about ideas and big social structure. Thinking about the Republic, for example, which I would read and study. It's about understanding the self and also how that projects onto the structure within the self, within your soul, how that presents onto the bigger world, the world of ideas and the world of society, the roles of the society. Why are there different classes in society? Why people specialize in things?
Yes.
All of that. They give you things to think about, and they do inspire you.
Talking about death, which city do you want to die if you can
Which
choose?
city?
No, because I know you're in France right now.
Yeah.
So at least you live in Oxford, UK, Lyon, France, and also Shanghai. How many cities have you lived besides that? Is that all?
Those are the three.
Okay. So out of Shanghai, Lyon, and Oxford, which city do you want to die if you can choose?
I can't really say right now. I can only say from my perspective now. Now, I have to say Oxford because
Why?
so many of my thinking and the things I've learned and explored and discovered comes from Oxford, and it's a place that I attach some special significance. So I think that it was just so intense reading all of these great writers, and thinking about all these ideas and sort of discussing the crafting of critical thoughts is very valuable to me.
So now, lastly, let's talk about something about like the non-academic part of Oxford.
Yeah.
So I think it might be a difficult question to imagine, but I really wanted to ask, do you have any friends or like connection in general you made in Oxford that you think you probably not have made if you went to university in Shanghai or China?
Yeah. So I had all kinds of, generally speaking, friendships that I've made in Oxford, which is very valuable. Learning about the people that were brought up and raised in a significantly different world the one that I was raised in. But, characters like these, they opened my eyes towards things in the world. But I value the people I've met there.
Yeah.
Because I see from them something that's at once different and same. I think that's because once you've actually started to interact with people that you think you've always thought were different from you, you start to notice
Sure.
actually there's so many things that are the same. It's incredible. Like the way you see life, the way you interact socially, and the way you begin to understand things and all of that. From my best friends were in Oxford I've made. They're from somewhere in England, various parts, and all the people international as well, all over the world.
What is the best moment you can think of right now? What's the best non-academic moments in Oxford? Do you remember?
Oxford.
Yeah.
Well, I've several. I have to say because I went back to Oxford last October or November.
Okay.
And I was for the first time in Oxford without having to study for anything. And I have everything to enjoy about the city and none of the stress that I usually have. I spent the best 5 days there just being with my friends and exploring the city and going around libraries, coffee cafes and bookshops and doing all the activities, eating the whole, and it was wonderful. So that was probably the best moment. I thought that was the best trip I've made this year back to Oxford and meeting everyone. So yeah, Oxford it's actually a very nice place to live in with all the historical buildings, all the amazing libraries, all the resources. Given that you don't have to study until 3 a.m.
Yeah.
writing an essay.
So the other day I was listening to a podcast sort of thing, and it was talking about happiness. Sort of, but like not in a pure psychological way. It's more like an academic study or something about happiness as a concept, as a measurement. So they say a concept like the UN used concept indicator called gross national happiness. So the way they do it is just use this to measure the overall happiness level about all the population among the world. And the way they actually measure it is just one of the main way is just calling to random people in each country and ask them one simple question. I'm going to ask you now.
Okay.
So, sure. Please imagine a ladder with steps numbered from 10 at bottom and a 0 at bottom and 10 at the top. The top of the ladder represents the best possible life for yourself you can imagine. And the ladder represents the worst possible life you can imagine for yourself. So which ladder do you think you are on now? Which step do you think your current life stands on?
Interesting question. If you want me to answer directly, I'll say 7, probably.
7. Oh, why?
7.5. But
Why?
I think now I'm just making the transition from purely studying to doing something else. So maybe I have to
Okay.
say the analogy doesn't really hold that well for me because all I'm seeing is I'm going to get off this ladder and go on a different.
Okay.
So as all things considered, I don't. It's very dynamic at this point in my life. But I always say 7. I'll say 7.
So,
There are things I'm happy about,
such as?
such as studying in an institution that I admire very much. I don't.
Actually, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't complain. I don't complain about the things I'm doing. The
Yeah.
structure might be slightly unhelpful, but I really like what I'm doing. I think that I have a good life, I'm connected with people, and all the things. I know where I have a rough idea of where I'm going. I've got interest in life. I very much enjoy things that I do, like for values on. And I think it's really good. I think it's really good. And also, I like being on the 7th ladder because if you're on the 10th ladder, you fall more easily, right? There's nothing to hold on to, right?
Oh,
So
that's interesting idea. Okay.
if you're on the 10, like you think, my life's the perfect one. And you meet this like slightest difficulty in life and you're like, actually, if this is the perfect life, then, then we're all messed up. Like life is actually not that good after all. Even the ideal life is so bad. And then you fall off. Okay, so something like, I think there's something comfortable about being in the 7th position. If I were to be, more imaginative about
But that's very interesting because apart from what you said about, a place to learn, to grow, and connection with other people, you also mentioned like sort of give a mental buffer zone about there's always something better we can potentially pursue, and that can make life even happier. But yeah, bro, good answer. Like fascinating discussion. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.